Okay, we'll continue with Tractate Eruvin, holding on 19b1. The chapter is Oisin Pasin, chapter 2, and we'll start from the left column. The Gemara questions Rabbi Meir's use of the term approximately in his measurement. Right, we learned before what is the thickness of a cow. So we have two interpretations. One was head and most of the body, and one
was 1 2/3
head and most of the body, and the second one was an amma and 2/3 of an amma. The two different things. You have head and majority of the body.
Right.
So the thickness, or the measurement rather, of the head and the majority of the body is 2 ammas. How much is the thickness of a cow? Is amma and 2/3 of an amma.
A cow is bigger than this. I mean, if you're measuring it from the head to the tail.
Yeah, it's bigger, but if you measure the width of it, so she'en ke'eser, which comes approximately 10 ammas. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says, shloishes amma, 13 amma ucharbaesra amma, approximately 13 ammas, approximately 14 ammas. According to Rabbi Yehuda, a gap wide enough for 8 oxen is permitted, so that the total allowable gap is 13 1/3 amma. Now you have to remember what is these measurements are in reference to. What do you mean a gap of 13 or 14 ammas? It's a gap when you have a well and you are building posts around the well in order to make it, in order to allow yourself to pump water from the well on Shabbos, right? To get water from the well. The problem is that the well is a Reshus Rabim. He's in Reshus Rabim. The well itself is Reshus HaYochid, but you have to make some kind of enclosure around the well. Question is, when you make those posts, how far they have to be from one another. How big is the gap? If you remember the diagram, those two-side double post on two sides, and then another single post in the middle. One says it's 4 like 8, and one says it's 8 like 12.
Yeah, they have at the bottom
That's really what these measurements are all about, right? So, good morning. So, Ke'eser ha-eser avin. The Gemara says, what do you mean approximately 10 ammas? It is exactly 10 ammas, which is 180 inches. Mishum devod misnaseva kishloisha. So since the Baisa intends to teach in the last part that Rabbi Yehuda allows an opening of approximately 13 ammas, the Baisa employs a parallel expression in recording the opinion of Rabbi Meir to maintain uniformity in the language of the Baisa. Kishloish esre, it is approximately 13 tvei avion, it is more than 13 ammas. Since the Baisa intends to teach that the measure is approximately 14 ammas, it employs a similar expression in other parts of the Baisa as well. It is not approximately 14 either, but significantly less than 14. So it's not 13 and it's not 14. In the case of a water hole, which is 8 ammas, remember we made a distinction between water hole and between a well.
Yes, different,
obviously. And no one disagrees when it comes to a water wall, to a water hole, that we do not need to introduce single post in the opening between the double posts, since the openings in such a case come to only 10 ammas. Even Rabbi Meir agrees that they are allowable. In the case of water hole, which is 12 or more ammas wide, no one disagrees. Want to close the door? Verse 12, in the case of water hole in which is 12 or more ames wide, the chulam lepligi, no one disagrees the vainam shooting that we need to introduce single post in the opening. Since the openings are 14 ames wide, even Rabbi Yehuda agrees that they are too wide to be permitted. Therefore, additional posts must be placed between the double post to diminish the size of the openings. Keep plige, in which case do Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda disagree? In the case of a water hole which is between 8 and 12 amis wide, which leaves an opening between the double post of 10 to 14 amis. Le Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir, Bainan Pishutim, we need to introduce single post to diminish the openings, because in the opinion of Rabbi Meir, the permissible opening is no more than 10 amis. Le Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Le Bainan Pishutim, we do not need to introduce a single post, because in his opinion, any opening that is no more than 13 and a third amis is permissible and does not require correction. Rav Papa Ma'ika Mashmalan. What is Rav Papa informing us that we do not already know? Tanina, we have already learnt in the Brisa that Rabbi Meir limits the size of the opening to no more than 10 amis, while Rabbi Yehuda sets the limit at 13 and 1/3 amis. Rav Papa Brisa lo shemi'a le v'kamashmalan ki Brisa. Rav Papa had not heard the Brisa, and he therefore informs us the same as the Brisa. The Gemara gives a series of 6 key words to aid in the memorization of the following 6 questions about 6 questions asked by Abaye of Rabbah. Arich, Yoser, Betal, Chitzat, Chatzer, Shibishe. Siman. So that's the Siman. We have 6 extended, Yoser more, but Betel in the mound, Chitzat, partition of, Chatzer, courtyard, Shibishe, that dried up, and Siman. So all 6 of these questions concern the double post erected around wells to permit water to be drawn from them on the Shabbos. The first question asked by Abaye of Rabbah concerns a set of double posts which are more than 10 amas apart. Abaye inquired of Rabbah, He'erich bedimyoidin, if he extended the double post, kashio peshutin, by an amount equal to the single post, he did not introduce single post into the middle of the openings as taught by Rabbi Meir, but instead extended the double post beyond their standard, beyond the standard width of 1 amma by an amount sufficient to reduce the width of the opening to within the 10 amma legal limit. Rabbi Meir, what is the law according to Rabbi Meir? Is this also an acceptable method of correction? Amar lei tenisua. Rabbi answered Abaye, you have learned the answer to this in the Mishnah, which says, provided that one adds to the boards. My love, does this not mean the marich b'yemdin, that he extends the double post to narrow the opening? So we see that extending the double post is acceptable. The Gemara rejects this pose. The Gemara says, Loi, the mapish ve'ovid peshutin. It may mean that he makes additional single post. We cannot prove from here that extending the double post is acceptable. Yachi, if so, that the Mishnah means that he makes additional single post rather than adds to the existing double post. Hayu vilvat shi'ava b'pasin, can this be referred to as provided that one adds to the boards? The Mishnah should rather have said, provided that one adds boards. Tenei Pasin, teach the Mishnah with these words, provided that one adds boards. Ika de Amri, some say Amr lei uvachiar bepasin. Tenisua, you have learned the answer to this in our Mishnah. Provided one adds to the boards. My love, the mapish peshutin, that he makes an additional single post to diminish the opening. This implies that extending the double post is not acceptable. The Gemara rejects this proof. Loi, the Gemara says the marich b'diyom din. It means that he extends the double post to narrow the opening. Achinam mistabel. This explanation seems more likely. Midaktanu levachi pasin, in as much as the Mishnah has taught that a larger area may be enclosed, provided that one adds to the boards. This implies extension of already existing boards, as was explained previously. Shmamina, we learn from this that extension of the double post is valid.
When they say extending the double posts, so that means you're going to have wider posts, or
it makes them taller because he writes previously that he narrows the opening. So what do you mean you extend them and at the same time you're narrowing the opening? If you look at number 10, he said adding to the boards implies extending the already existing ones.
Yeah, extending it. You're saying extending it up, not.
Why am I saying it? Because he wrote before that it narrows the opening. So when you go taller,
That's not narrowing the opening.
you keep the opening the same way, but how do you narrow the opening by extending them? Unless you're stretching them. Unless you're stretching, if they are stretchable, and anything that's stretched becomes thinner.
Boards, you're not
Right, you can't stretch
board.
them, but that's the.
Okay, that's what I was a little didn't understand so much.
So if you add to the width, that's the only way to narrow the opening.
Right.
So it has to be the width.
Right. That's what I thought.
That's it. So what does it say in 10? Adding to the boards implies extending the already existing ones.
So that means you're making, all right, so you take it, so that it ends up being more than one board, where you're making a wider board.
Well, it said clearly that it narrows the opening.
Right.
But the point is, it's saying it's acceptable, and that Shmamina tells us that it is valid. Abai inquired of Rabba if the opening is more than 13 and 1/3 amma wide, which is not acceptable even according to Rabbi Yehuda. It's too wide of an opening, so therefore it invalidates the enclosure. Rabbi Yehuda Mao, Pshutin Ovid Oibed Yom Dimarich, does he make a single post or extend a double post? Amar Lei, so he said to him, Tanisua, you have learned the answer to this in a Baisa. Kama en Mekurovin. So we are reading 19b2 in the right column, the middle. Amar Lei Tanisua, Kama en Kurovin. Kama en Mekurovin. How close may the double post be to the well? How much space must there be between the well and the line defined by the double post? Kedei Rosh V'ruba Shapor, enough to accommodate the head and most of the body of a cow. How distant they may be from the well, how large may the enclosure be within the double post, afilu koir v'afilu koiraim, even a core and even 2 cores. Rabbi Yehuda Imer, beis asayim mutar, an area up to 2 beisea is permitted. Yoisam beis asayim also, but more than 2 beisea is prohibited. The area is too large to be enclosed by a double post. Amuloi Rabbi Yehuda. So the sages said to Rabbi Yehuda, do you not agree in the cases of a foaled deer, which is usually goats and flocks are living in a fold, corral and backyard,
It's a
corral, backyard and courtyard, afilu bas chamesh skedim, which have an area and even 5 cores. Afilu basorkom, or in an area of even 10 cores. Shemuta, it is permissible to carry within them, despite the size of the enclosure. Omar Loin, so Rabbi Yehuda replied to them, to the sages, Zoi mechitza ve'elu pasin. This is a wall and these are boards. The 2 cases are not comparable. The fold, corral, and yards are enclosed by an actual wall, while the well is enclosed merely by a few posts. A nominal partition, the permissible area of enclosure is more limited in the case of a well.
The idea is to have the animal should have access to the water.
Yes, it's true. But remember, we learned Rosh of Ruba that you want to have the head and most of its body inside the enclosure.
Right.
Now, if it is true that according to Rabbi Yehuda, only the method of correction is to extend the double post until the gap between them is reduced to 13 and a third amis, an area of the two Beiseya would require a very long double post, and they would be tantamount to actual walls. The Gemara says, Zoi mechitza v'zoi mechitza mibarlei. Therefore, he should have said, this is a wall, and this is a wall, and Rabbi Yehuda would not have any basis to differentiate. The Gemara rejects the proof offered by Rabbah. The Gemara maintains that it is possible that Rabbi Yehuda does sanction extension of the double post as the only valid method of closing the gap. And his words at the end of the Tosefta could in fact refer to extended double post. Achikom azoi zu toiras mechitza oleo ufirtziseo be'eser. This partition that surrounds the fold, corral, or yard has the legal status of a wall insofar as its gaps may be only 10 ames. While these extended double posts that surround the well have the legal status of boards, insofar as the gap between them may be 13 ames and a third wide. Therefore, they may not enclose an area greater than 2 Beis Seya, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda may in fact be referring to extended double post. The third question asked by Abaye of Rabbah concerns a question asked by Abaye of Rabbah concerns a mound, a tail, a mound situated at a corner of the area to be enclosed around a well. Abaye asked Rava, Tail hamislakit, a mound of earth which rises to a height of 10 tfochim within 4 amis of its slope. You can see in the diagram. The angle of its slope is such that it takes no more than 4 amis along its slope for it to rise to a height of 10 tfochim. Nidon mishum de yoimad is treated as a double post, since it contains within it the dimensions of a double post. Or eino nidon mishum de yoimad, or perhaps it's not treated as a double post, since it lacks the right angle shape of a double post. Omar lei tenisua, you have learned the answer to this in a bais. There was a square rock there in a place of the double post. We view it that if the rock were to be split, it would have an amma on this side and an amma on this side in the shape of a right angle. Then it is treated as a double post, and if not, if less than an amma on each side would remain after it had been divided. It is not treated as a double post. Rabbi Shmuel the son of Yecham Broka says, if there was a round rock there in place of a double post, we view the rock that if it were to be hewn into a square shape and split to form a right angle, it would have an amma on this side and amma on this side. Nidon mishum de yoimad, it is treated as a double post. And if not, if less than an amma on each side would remain after it had been hewn and split, it is not treated as a double post. So in order for it to be treated as a double post, it needs to be chopped down. Even if you were to hewn it, to split it, it still has an amma on each side, then it's called a double post. In what point do they disagree? Mar Sova Roinam Rina. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar is of the opinion that we may view one change in the rock to make it acceptable as a double post. But we may not view two changes in the rock to make it acceptable. Therefore, a square rock is acceptable because it requires only one procedure, splitting to transform it into a right-angled shape. But a round rock is unacceptable because it requires two procedures, hewing the round surface to a rectangular shape and splitting. And the other master, Rabbi Shmuel, is of the opinion that we may view even two changes in the rock to make it acceptable as a double post. Therefore, even a round rock, which requires two imaginary procedures to make it a double post, the hewing and the splitting, is still acceptable. With this, Rabbah answers Abaye's question whether a mound of earth may serve as a double post, since a mound of earth is round. Two procedures are required to transform it into a right angle. Therefore, its validity as a double post depends on the dispute in this Baisa. According to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, the mound would not be valid, while according to Shmuel, it would be valid provided it is of the right size. Abai inquired of Rabbi, Chitzas Akonim, a partition of reeds, in the shape of a double post. In which each reed is less than 3 tfochim away from the other. Is it considered a double post or not? Nidon mishum deimad or lav. Is such a fence regarded as a double post or not? Amar lei tenisua. You have learned the answer to this in a Baisa. Hoy Yoshom Ilon, Oy Godor Chitzasakonim, if there was a tree, a fence, or partition of reeds there in place of a double post, neither Mishum, the Yomite, it is treated as a double post. My love, Kone Pochos Mishloisha. Does this not refer to a row of reeds in which each reed is less than 3 tfochim from the next one? We see, therefore, that the Baisa considers it to be a valid double post. The Gemara rejects this proof by raising the possibility that the Baisa is referring to a different case. Loi guderiso de kone. The partition mentioned here might refer to a hedge of reeds that sprouts from a common trunk on the ground, from which its branches separate and diverge, creating the appearance of separate reeds. Yochainu Ilan, it is, if so, that it refers to a hedge of reeds, then it is the same as the case of the tree, which is also mentioned in this Baisa, and there is no reason to add this case as well. The Gemara defends its alternative explanation, but rather, what does it mean? Kone pochos mishloisho, a row of reeds in which each reed is less than 3 tfochim from the next one. Hainu god. This is the same as the case of the fence mentioned in the Baisa, and there is no reason for the Baisa to mention that either. So what must you say? That the Baisa lists two forms of fences: a proper fence and a fence of reeds. According to this explanation, we may say that the Baisa lists two distinct forms of trees: an ordinary tree and a hedge of reeds. They're almost like a bush. It can be even over here uses the terminology an ordinary tree and a hedge of reeds. If you look at 31, it says the possibility exists that this Baisa is referring to a hedge of reeds, and therefore it cannot be proven from here that a row of reeds in the shape of a double post is valid. So Ika de Amri Gudrisa de Kone Kamibali. So the Gemara presents an alternative version of the fourth question asked by Abaye of Rabbah. Ika de Amri Gudrisa de Kone Kamibali. He, Abaye, asked Rabbah about a hedge of reeds. Gudrisa de Konemai, a hedge of reeds, what is the status of hedge of reeds? Can it serve as a double post or not? According to this version, Rabbah's proof from the Brisa was as follows. Omar le, Teni Sua, you have learned the answer to this in a Brisa. If there was a fence, a tree or partition of reeds there in place of a double post, Nidon Mishum Diyomad, it is treated as a double post. My love, Gudrisa de Kone. Does this not refer to a hedge of reeds, demonstrating that the Brisa considers it valid as a double post? The Gemara rejects this proof by raising the possibility that the Brisa is referring to a different case. Loi Kone Pochos Mishloisha. No, it refers to a row of reeds arranged so that each reed is less than 3 tfachim from the next one. If that's the case, it's a regular fence. It is the same as the fence. The case of a fence mentioned in the Brisa. The Gemara says, "Ve'lamai," but rather, what does it mean? Gudrisa de Kone, a hedge of reeds. Ainu ilan. This is the same as the case of the tree, and there is therefore no reason for the Brisa to mention that either. Elamai stachlememo. So what must you say? Today, Gavne ilan, that the Brisa lists two forms of trees: an ordinary tree and a hedge of reeds. According to this explanation too, we may say that the Brisa lists two forms of trees: a proper fence and a fence of reeds. Possibility does exist that this Brisa is referring to a fence of reeds, and therefore it cannot be proven from here that a hedge of reeds is valid.
Why wouldn't it be valid? I don't know. Why wouldn't a hedge be valid? You can make hedges. Look, you see all over. Hedges are used for walls. You go to all the richies; they have big hedges in front of their houses.
So this is the question that Abaye is asking. It doesn't say if it's valid or not. If it's valid as a double post. That's the question.
So you could cut it like this.
He's saying, if you look at it, he says, "Gudrisa de Kone." What he said is that can serve as a double post or not. That's what Abaye is asking Rabbah. So according to, let's look at 32. It says, according to this version of the discussion between Abaye and Rabbah, it is assumed that an L-shaped row of reeds is in fact valid as a double post, since it has the shape of a double post. The question here is only with regard to a hedge of reeds. The hedge suffers from two drawbacks.
Right.
It is not a solid wall, number one. There you go. And it lacks the shape of a double post. Considering it a double post is therefore more problematic than in the case of a row of reeds. However, which has at least, right? The previous version, however, assumed that a hedge of reeds is valid and inquired about a row of reeds which is inferior over its entire height. Buchim to you.